everyone. This is Steve Weintraub with Collider. I'm here in our South by Southwest studio to talk about Secret Mall Apartment. I have so many things to talk about with this movie, but the thing is, everyone watching this won't have seen it yet. So how have you been describing this to friends and family?
As like one of the most bonkers, bananas, like awesome stories you're gonna hear, and you're gonna hear it and you're gonna think it's made up, but it's totally true. So essentially, in the early 2000s, a bunch of kooks, artists, activists, like 8 of them, were mad about gentrification in Providence, Rhode Island, particularly when a gigantic mall, the Providence Place Mall, came into their town and displaced a lot of people. They snuck into the mall. They discovered a secret space that was sort of like under the Cineplex, like buried inside like the architecture, and they decided to turn it into their secret apartment, which they kept going for 4 years, living in it on and off. And the whole time they filmed it all along the way, and they turned it into this space that they brought in furniture, they tapped into the electricity, they brought in televisions and couches and a
PlayStation even.
Yeah, a PlayStation, and just had this vision of living this domestic bliss inside this busy mall.
I grew up not that far from the Providence Place Mall.
No kidding.
So for me, this is
second time.
Wow.
This is Perry, who's off camera right now, wanted this interview, and I said, I can't give you this one. I grew up near this mall. I have to take this conversation. And because I have family that still lives near the mall.
Have you been in the mall?
I have been in the mall.
Have you lived in the mall?
I have not lived in the mall, but I've been to that movie theater, the IMAX theater there. Yeah. I've eaten in that food court.
So you probably walked over where they were in the secret apartment.
I would say I've been to the Newbury Comics in that mall.
So if you were there in the early 2000s, from 2003 to 2007, you were there when they were living inside it.
I don't know if I went to the mall during that time, but I know this mall, and I know how shitty the parking garage is.
Terrible.
Because it was designed by someone who doesn't it was like a first year engineering student, or because the parking garage is terrible there.
Yeah.
So this is how you know you've been there.
Yeah.
Because it's that bad. Jesse's like,
I've
what?
been there. I've been there. I lived under the mall.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
Wait, what?
No. That's the sequel. No, I lived like in an apartment complex that was like in the shadow of the mall.
That is sort of weirdly part of the story.
Yes.
When did you live near the mall?
Oh, it would have been 2007. So maybe at the tail end.
Yeah.
At the tail end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I was working there. I didn't pack up my bag. I was just like working there in Providence, and we were doing a movie that was shooting on the campus of Brown. And
now
so we were
I'm getting
shooting
it. I didn't understand how you've been living. Now I'm getting it.
Yeah. I explained it in the worst way. But basically, so I ended up like living next door, and I had these thoughts. And so when I kind of watched this movie and I saw that these guys were like, it's because the movie begins where you're meeting these artists and they seem to have a grudge against this mall. And I think for most people, it's like, for most people watching this amazing movie, I think like it's like they're trying to figure out why. But for me, it was immediately understandable why they had a grudge against this mall. It's impossible to enter this mall, and the mall really like divided the city in a way that was really exclusionary. And so that's kind of what these characters were rebelling against.
What people don't realize, and I want to have you talk, but they built it in such a stupid way that there's like a 1-lane road to get up. So it's like, okay, you have a mall that you're expecting tens of thousands of people to go to, and you are building a road that holds 5 people.
Yeah, this was the classic thing where malls came into cities and, obviously suburbs first, but then they started to go into cities and they would just displace people and they would just recreate neighborhoods. And that's what happened in Providence. There was this area that was kind of like lower income area, more working class, and they just kind of like scooched them off to put in this gigantic mall and then kind of didn't really invite them to be a part of it. And that's where this group of people kind of come from, and that was kind of behind this kind of crazy bananas idea.
Listen, I know you've been asked this, but I have to ask, how did you guys connect to have you as a producer on this?
It's not really something I pursue or seek out or even really am that interested in. But this unusual connection started because Jeremy had reached out to me. We had met at like a kind of a brief like press thing because Jeremy does a lot of behind the scenes work as well as these great documentaries. Anyway, so Jeremy had approached me about coming on as an executive producer of not his previous movie, but the previous movie before that, which is called The World Before Your Feet, about this guy, Matt Green, who walked every single street in the 5 boroughs of New York City. And
9,000 miles.
yeah. Was it up to 9? Up to 9. Okay.
Back in the day when it was 8. Now
Yeah, I
it's
know.
9.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, I guess. Anyway, so like, so I watched that movie, and I just thought, if I told Jeremy if there was anything I could do to possibly help out getting this movie out, giving you feedback, anything I could do to just be helpful here, I would be so honored to be a part of it. And then, you know, it was like one of these things. Like I thought Jeremy struck, you know, had lightning in a bottle because this movie was so amazing. It turns out that he just is very talented because he's now done it again and again. And so this new movie, which is also like a lightning in the bottle thing, you watch this movie and think, wow, I bet this just is the complete luck of this filmmaker that he had this footage, that he access to the story, but it's really just Jeremy being very talented and insightful. So basically Jeremy came to me with this and I had the same reaction. It was just like this incredible story. What's amazing about this story is that like, you asked Jeremy, like, what does he tell people about this movie? And it's like what I tell people too. It sounds like this prank that these, you know,
Totally.
brilliant kind of artsy kids moved into a mall. And it sounds like kind of a funny lark. But when you watch the movie, it's what Jeremy does so well is like you realize that this is a movie about like a cultural shift happening at that moment in the country, really, which was just this gentrification in these kind of, you know, post-war forgotten cities. And like the young artists who were being displaced and found really interesting creative ways to rebel against it. And so the movie is really about gentrification, about class, about privilege, about homeownership. And so I think it just hits on so many of these levels while also being this really fun, funny, crazy story.
I'm curious. One of the things is you have to get clearance on footage. How difficult was it with all the footage that you have in this movie?
I was wondering that too.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, so they all these 8, there was 8 of them that built this apartment. And as we were saying, you know, they start bringing in furniture and they put up walls and they're bringing in cinder block and they're literally building like a perfect suburban, you know, blissful existence in the middle of this mall while it's still going on and it's still very busy and nobody knows. And all that time they're filming. So they had this tiny little camera that was, you know, circa like 2007, something you'd buy at Radio Shack for $150. It was a Pentax Optio, and it shot in 320 by 240. Okay, so that just to give a sense of that, we're now talking like 4K movies and whatnot, and it's probably like 20 times the size, maybe more, maybe 50 times the size. It's a postage stamp kind of video. So they shot 24 hours over the course of 4 years. They kept the apartment going for 4 years before they got caught. And they filmed about 24, 25 hours. And the main subject, who becomes the main character in the movie, he and I became very close. And he basically was like, take all this footage and make a movie with it. And he entrusted me with it, which was pretty incredible because his name's Micheal Townsend and he's, you know, the main character. And Michael had a number of filmmakers come to him who wanted to do this documentary over the years, over like 15 years or so. And he would constantly turn them down. And somewhere along the line, it just, you know, we connected and really started to see how to do this in a really neat way. And he invited me to do it with all this footage.
But I'm curious about the clearance. So like you have footage in the mall with random people. You have different places, whether it be like the hospital with the tape art.
Oh yeah, that's all. We have permission on all that stuff. Yeah.
Like their main meal is popcorn out of a War of the Worlds bag. How'd you clear the War of the Worlds?
Well, you know, this is a documentary filmmaking, and you know what's great. And when we started this project, we were like, okay, how you know is this gonna, you know, are we okay? This is kind of bandit footage, and there's this incredible precedence where it's like, oh, even if somebody trespasses into a place and records footage, that footage is still allowed to be public, and that's been established in a number of ways. So we kind of like rode on that for in some sense, and others is just the years have passed. And what you mentioned, you know, these artists were also doing a lot of artwork in hospitals. That was all stuff that they were doing, you know.
So I definitely have to ask, what is the grand plan for the world premiere at the Providence Place Mall?
Where you've seen movies,
Right.
you know?
Honestly, there is no other place to premiere this movie.
It's so brilliant. Have you thought about that?
We have.
Is it
We've
safe?
thought about. Well, you know, there's the relationship between the subject and the mall is a little fraught,
Well,
as you could imagine.
Michael might not be able to go to the premiere,
Correct.
but other people might.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, they were caught in this kind of, you know, very public way, and it became, you know, a big story in Providence.
Sure.
But then it was kind of forgotten. It became a little bit urban legend. But he's essentially banned from the mall.
No, but in all seriousness, like there's a lot of once this gets announced and more people hear about it, because right now it's still, you know, like early
it's
days.
bubbling.
Yeah, exactly.
right.
But like once people, the Providence newspapers and the Providence people, once they hear about this, I'm sure are going to want to see the movie because it talks about Providence. So like,
We're ready.
It would be a goodwill gesture if they had the premiere there and allowed Michael back in.
Yeah, they really would.
this would be like, for me, it's a no-brainer of where this has to premiere. It has to premiere at the mall.
We are totally interested in that, and anyone watching, we would love to do it there. Yeah.
I mean, anyway. So one of the things, though, how did you, in the editing room, you're putting it all together. It can obviously go in many different directions because it's a documentary. So talk a little bit about who did you show the movie to? Maybe it was you, other people, that they watched it and gave you like, you know, the honest feedback where you're like hearing, oh, maybe I need to fix this thing.
Sure.
Or maybe this isn't 100, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, editing is really important to me. You know, besides making documentaries, I'm an editor, and I've been doing that for years and years. It's kind of, in a weird way, the only job I've had. You know, on this movie, there's these incredible, like, super fun scenes that are like these sugar rush scenes, you know, where it's almost like watching a heist movie where they're going into the mall and building it and bringing stuff in and bringing furniture and like working with the alarms and all that. And then, as Jesse said, there's all these other really interesting scenes that are like deeper and about bigger issues. So a lot of the editing was how to balance that, you know, and we were constantly like figuring out like how to switch gears so that a viewer would be riding along with like sort of the wave of joy and fun and delight of those scenes, those, you know, heist scenes, but then kind of segueing and kind of dipping into these other scenes that showed that there was more to it than just them, you know, as a prank.
Sure. Did you make any big changes to the film as a result of a friends and family screening?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I definitely am. I like to get a lot of feedback, you know, and I show it to a lot of people, show it to a lot of people I trust. A lot of filmmakers, you know, they're sometimes really tough critics too.
Sure. But isn't it better though to get that brutal feedback early or even late so you know that you know what I mean? Like to make the best version that you can?
Yeah. And we're always like, I'm always like thinking like try to get it really tight and, you know, 90 minutes and that's kind of where we are. But yeah, you know, I do a lot of like sort of test screenings and I sit down with people and I like to sit down with viewers and friends and just me and them in the room watching it, you know, not like big, you know, events, but just like me and somebody watching it on a screen and kind of gauging their reaction. And we did a lot. So it definitely changed, you know, it's that the whole process of just making a documentary that it changes and develops and gets better. And then, you know, we start figuring out like how best to tell this story.
If you could only watch one TV show for the rest of your life, what TV show would it be and why?
I started watching Seinfeld again because I haven't seen it since I was a kid and didn't get all the references. And it just has this unusually timeless quality. Like a lot of it like is like socially antiquated and technologically antiquated, but like the humor just feels to me pretty contemporary.
I completely agree. It's funny rewatching Seinfeld just because of as you said, the technology, cell phones, all that kind of stuff. But it's really the relationships between the four of them that make that show.
Yeah. And I'm just finding it so funny and I just can't wait till my kid is old enough. I'm like counting down the days.
When do you think you could start showing it to your kid?
Maybe ages 3 or 4. No, I don't know. No. I don't know. I don't know when it would be funny. Maybe 12. I don't know when it would be funny. I don't know. And I don't want it to be funny in the wrong reason, in the wrong way, like with broad humor. I want it to be funny in the right way with the cynicism, the nihilism of the world. So we have to wait a few years.
Maybe 16.
Maybe 16.
Yeah.
TV, I'm gonna go with like some sort of game show, just to kind of like feel the world in a different place. Maybe The Price is Right, and just kind of keep watching that, feel that, kind of see the experience of watching people come, and
it's one of the reasons I love this question is I've been hearing such a wide variety of answers. Someone else said Family Feud.
Yeah,
but not
totally.
Price is Right. So that's a new one, and Seinfeld's a new one.
Did anyone say like?
No one else has said Seinfeld yet.
What did anyone say, like, Jeopardy or anything like that?
Oh, I've heard everything from West Wing to Sesame Street.
Oh, nice.
I've heard all the answers. But what I love is that there's a few of the same, but almost everyone is different.
Really?
Yeah, it's been,
Anything you never heard of?
Yeah, there's been a few British shows, but I think the criteria that it's funny hearing people figure out okay, well, if it's only one show, what show has like 20 or 30 seasons?
Right.
And
Practical answers to you.
Yeah, because like if it's the rest of my life,
that's why game shows just you just
also,
constantly.
Bob Barker is amazing. Like I grew up on Bob Barker. Spay and neuter your cats or your pets, I should say.
Yeah,
I thought he hated animals when I was younger. And then, because my family is also like animal rights activist kind of people, but I was like, this is awful that he says this at the end. And then I got older and realized what he was talking about. But I thought he meant like, don't have pets. That's what I read it as.
I fully support spay and neutering pets, and obviously,
of course,
but no, he loved animals, and one of the reasons why I loved him.
Yeah,
I have a question for you about Secret Mall Apartment.
Oh, hit me up.
Could there be a scripted remake?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. It all comes. Well, yes, absolutely. But I nowadays I think about everything under the lens of, is this a movie or is this a TV show? Because the thing that I have on Collider, I see what people are interested in and what they click on, and like I can see the raw data of what people are interested in, and the growing numbers of people that watch TV over movies, it's skewing, because television, and I'm sure you're well aware because you have done some great TV work recently, is that, the production quality of television is, it's like sometimes it's, looks better than a feature film, and so, the question becomes like, what is it, a 2-hour movie, or is it a 1 season limited series, or you know what I mean?
Sure. What do you think about for this documentary?
I think it all depends on what you're trying to do. Right. Like, what is the ultimate? Because not to put myself in this, but it's all about like, well, who's the protagonist? Who's the antagonist? Right. What are we building towards? If you're putting people in the mall, what are they? Is that they're like in the movie, in your documentary? That's like their base, where they're talking about art projects and doing art installations and using it as like their base. And is it one of these things where you're making a different kind of thing, where it's like, this is where they're making drugs and supplying the people in the mall, like, is this like the Breaking Bad of Secret Mall Apartment, or is this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or like, is this the place we're storing stuff that we can't store anywhere else?
It's not cool enough that they're just, in there doing.
No, it has to be drugs. It has to be drugs.
No,
like cool, like charitable artwork.
No, but by the way, but it could be that. But ultimately, it's about, like I said, if you are doing a limited series, like. Totally. And also, not every show has to be 5 seasons. Some shows can be 1 or 2 or 3. You know what I mean? Is that something you guys are thinking about?
Yeah, it lends itself so well. I mean, that's my world. And so when I saw this, I'm like, oh my God, it lends itself so perfectly. I mean, it's such a crazy story. It has everything in it. The characters are incredibly lovable. The foe is real, which is the mall. It's great. I mean,
So are you thinking about it as a movie or a TV show?
Yeah, I had the same thoughts as you, and Jeremy and I were talking about it a few months ago. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, it seems like it could warrant a series only because there's a lot there, and because it's over the course of a long period of time. You know what I mean?
Listen, 100%. I feel so stupid that I just kept on going off on drugs. You know what I mean? And building a drug factory.
No. You're setting like the kind of like dramatic bar. Like this is like the extent.
Right.
And we know now we can pull back.
No, but I mean, like, you know what I mean? There's
course.
a lot of possibilities. One of the things that I was not familiar with this doc, and I know I'm running out of time, is tape art.
Yeah.
I found that very, very interesting and cool. And I consider myself like I love going to museums and learning about art. I was not familiar with it.
Yeah. So the main subject, Micheal Townsend, he went when they were in the mall, they were doing all this other art projects on the side. Many of them, as we kind of were alluding to, were like charitable. They were doing it voluntarily. They would go into hospitals, children's hospitals, and do artwork for the patients. They were doing memorials for 9/11 and victims of other tragedies. And it was all using tape art, which you hear and you're like, that's what is this? It's essentially masking tape murals, masking tape street art. And they were doing it in these really thoughtful and emotional ways, where they were doing it to, commemorate these events. And it's really surprisingly like really powerful. And it also gets into these issues that are very much at play in the movie about like permanence and impermanence of art.
Yeah.
They're all about that, these guys.
Well, also, and I don't want to like give everything about the movie, but there's a great installation underneath, I don't know if it was the sewer but like it's a beautiful piece of art that was created that is obviously not there anymore. Anyway.
Yeah, they're really interesting. And I think that's what really connected with me. And I think Jesse as well, where like you hear this and you're like, oh my God, this is the greatest prank story ever. And then you start digging deeper and like, they're really doing interesting things. What you're talking about is they do this under a tunnel, like a sewage tunnel that nobody knew about. They did a gigantic art exhibit, or like an art installation that they didn't tell anybody about. And so it like has like elements where they're like sort of like, doing weird Banksy art in the middle of this. And they do it for these very noble purposes. So it all kind of adds up to these like really interesting people that I was really blown away by.
I loved the that sewer installation. And it's so funny that like if that same installation was done by someone that everybody knew, like a Banksy or somebody else, it would be a madhouse. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's all about perception of who the artist is, and you know what I mean? But it was fantastic work.
Yeah, they're all about like, living your life with passion and like really like embracing what you're doing with like in the most like vigorous way, and I think that The Secret Apartment is totally that. They're building this incredible space that's just 750 square feet, but they're doing it like as good as they possibly can in the middle of this mall without anyone knowing. And I think that is just really amazing to watch.
I definitely have to ask you an individual question. So first, congrats on your Sundance sale.
Oh, thanks.
What is that like to bring a movie to Sundance and then have it sell for like $10 million or some obscene amount? Do you know what I mean?
It's amazing. I mean, yeah, I didn't have like very high aspirations for it. It was a small movie and it's like a personal movie. So I really didn't conceive of it having like a splashy response. Cause it's like, kind of a personal movie. So it was like amazing. It's like, because I didn't have those expectations at all. I do think probably if you go into Sundance with those expectations, then you're feeling stressed the whole time. But we had kind of modest expectations because the movie is like I don't know, just like an intimate kind of thing.
Sure. When is it? Have they announced a release date? Do you know?
Not yet. No, we're figuring it out now. Yeah.
You are also doing a lot of television. You are writing a lot, actually. Let's who's kidding yourself? I mean, like, how are you doing all this? Because it seems like you're being as prolific as anyone can be.
No, I mean, my sense of like actors is even the really, really successful, busy actors will have like a lot of time off, unlike my parents who don't have time off. You know what I mean? Unlike most normal jobs in the world who don't have any time off.
But not everyone writes this much and produce. You know what? I mean?
Because I'm disciplined about it. I go to the library when I'm not working on a movie. I go to the library every day and work, and I just have a plan. And so, yeah, that's all it is. Just treat it like a job. Otherwise, I think I would go a little nuts because I'm a little, what is the word? Like ADD-ish, a little attention deficit, problems. So like for me, I need to stay busy every day or else I can, it's not the best for me.
My last thing for you, what are you doing in the rest of the year in terms of projects? Have you figured out what you're doing? What are you working on?
Yeah, I'm trying to direct my next movie, which I was hoping to do in the summer, but it looks like we'll push a bit. And Now You See Me 3 wants to happen, so I'm really excited and hoping it does kind of come to fruition.
Oh, if you don't mind, I have to follow up. What is your next movie? Have you announced anything?
Oh, no, it's a musical, but I'm not supposed to talk about it. But yeah. It's not a musical in earnest. It's a musical. It's hard to describe. There's a musical in the movie, and hopefully.
Who told you not to talk about it? Because they clearly don't read Collider.
Oh, wait, what do you mean?
I'm joking around.
Oh, got it.
Right.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm so happy about it, but just because it's in the pre-production phase, I don't want to say things that are not contractually relevant yet.
Oh, I also the truth is and you guys know, with financing and everything, who the F knows what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
But although when you sell a movie for $10 million out of Sundance, you'll probably get money to make your next movie.
I'm probably in this very, very brief place that I'll never be back to, where I feel like more confident that I could make this next movie than I ever felt, just because there was a nice response to the first one. And then I assume I'll go back to zero after they both fail.
I'm telling you, the Sundance sale has made it that whatever you want to do next, as long as there is some sort of commercial appeal,
right.
and you cast a few people that people know, you can make it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's what I hope as well.
As long as you just keep repeating what you're doing.
Exactly, and never stumble.
So you are also a very busy person. What are you, now that this is done, are you one of these people that's working on multiple things at the same time?
I am. I have a couple documentaries that are about to go and that are financed, and it's just a question of when we're moving on them and when I have time to start shooting and all those kind of things. So yeah, I mostly work in nonfiction, but I love documentaries, and so I'm always trying to keep busy on the next ones.
With adapting this to being a TV show, is it one of these things where, do you need the artist? How does it work in terms of the rights? Say you guys came up with an 8-episode series, and you wanted to make it, and you wanted to call it Secret Mall Apartment or Secret Mall Apartment the series. How does it work in terms of does Micheal and everybody have, you know what I mean?
I think it's become, there's a documentary on it. So now there's that IP of a documentary, and then you could make a version off of that. But yeah, Micheal, who's awesome, Micheal Townsend, he's great. And he also, it's his life. So we're also trying to, we would navigate that as well in terms of the documentary and the individual and all that.
No, I was just saying interesting to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I mean it's complicated, but movies are constantly figuring out those.
There's also the possibility of just changing names and altering the story slightly. Like I said, to have a drug den in the mall.
Yeah. I think the guys would like that.
Yeah, that would be
We're making you all drug dealers now.
Listen, I really appreciate you indulging me with so much time.
Thank you.
And I really wish you guys nothing but the best. And I do really hope you are premiering this at the mall.